Hello and welcome to another edition of the homeschool educational supplement that we know as Interesting Stuff. And today we are going to be diving into the topic of extinction. Yes, it's the most creative and yet most destructive force in nature. So let's learn a little bit about it together. Right, so where do we start? Well, an estimated 1 million species across the planet are threatened with extinction at the moment. And this includes individual plants and animals, with numbers dwindling until perhaps they disappear forever. But for as long as there has been life on Earth, extinction has been here. It's a part of the natural process of change and development. Species evolve, adapting to live in new environments or changing as their environment changes. Until, for many of the species, they eventually die out. In fact, scientists theorize that we too, perhaps one day, will not be here. But we are here. And as we're still here, let's continue. Now, as extinction has been present since the first forms of life on Earth came into existence, this must mean an incomprehensible number of species have come into existence and then faded out. Research estimates that as many as 99% of the species that have ever lived have disappeared. And it's amazing to think that what we see in the world today may be less than 1% of what has existed. Now you might ask, why are people worried about the loss of present species if it's normal? Well, most extinctions in the past were caused by large-scale changes in the environment. But the present-day threats to animals and the natural world are being caused mostly by human activity. So if we are to save today's endangered species, habitats and ecosystems, then we have to understand our own role in the process. So when you hear the word extinction, what do you immediately think about? Is it dinosaurs? Is it dodos? Well, dinosaurs are the most famous extinct animals, and most people assume their disappearance 66 million years ago was the biggest such event in Earth's history. But the fact just is that we don't know a lot about what happened in the past. We only have a small piece of a large history of what people and animals have been doing on our planet. On the other hand, it is known why some of the animals died out. For example, most recently, the dodos, which were flightless giant pigeons, and their inability to fly and their slow running speed seems that they were, in an evolutionary sense, pretty much designed to fail. Crazily enough, did you know that all of today's birds are descended from dinosaurs? What's more, becoming extinct is a natural part of the cycle of a species. And in general, it has very little to do with how able or unable a species is, although adaptability will allow you to survive for longer. Now, even extinct groups that may not look very impressive can be fantastic evolutionary success stories. One crazy example is trilobites, which were marine creatures, something akin to wood lice, like little beetles that live in wood. And they thrived for 300 million years and had at least 20,000 known species. Also, extinction doesn't just simply pick off the weak and small. Huge predators, such as the Dunkleosteus, an armored fish with a devastating bite, or the megalodon, the largest shark ever to exist, or even the mighty T-Rex, were all claimed by extinction, despite being perfectly suited to thrive in their environments. Now, where a species lives matters, because every single species evolves to fit into a particular habitat alongside other living things in that environment. A species adapts a way of life that will help it survive and have offspring. And extinction tends to happen when a species can no longer survive in this slot or space or ecological niche that it has created for itself. And what are the reasons for a species disappearance? Well, there are so many. There are lots of different causes of extinctions. And whereas one reason may kill off just a single species, another reason may kill off thousands or even millions at once. The aforementioned dodo, for example, was driven off into extinction by a single force, the human. Whereas at the opposite end of the scale, an asteroid impact that ended the reign of the dinosaurs some 66 million years ago probably wiped out 75% of the life on our planet. And if the theory is true, probably nothing bigger than a sheep survived. So all that's needed for extinction to occur is an event that changes a species' environment too severely or too quickly for it to adapt and overcome. The bigger the changes, the greater the chance that many species will be affected. It all sounds quite dark, doesn't it? But it's not really all doom and gloom, because when a species becomes extinct, it creates an opportunity for others. Competition, especially, for example, for living space, food, and other resources, forces species into ever more specialized ecological niches. And when some element of competition is removed, the survivors can benefit. So extinction can lead to a boom in the formation of species and groups of organisms to replace those that have been lost. And one of the clearest examples of this process happened when large marine reptiles became extinct, along with the dinosaurs some 66 million years ago. Within 10 to 15 million years of their loss, which is actually quite a long time, the first whales had appeared to fill a very similar niche in the oceans, evolving from land-living mammals that waded into the shallows. Without that extinction, whales, dolphins, and porpoises would probably never have come into existence. So one group's misfortune is another's lucky day. So what does the science tell us today? Well, based on evidence from fossils, the normal rate of extinctions is about one species in every million each year. At present, however, the rate of species decline and loss may be up to 10,000 times faster than that. Latest numbers apparently show that 1 million species are heading for extinction. For example, the Chinese gibbon has fewer than 30 individuals left, and as many as 30% of all amphibian species are at some level of risk. Unfortunately, due to habitat destruction, pollution, invasive species, diseases, overhunting, and perhaps even some global warming, what the planet is now seeing compares to some of the worst losses from previous mass extinctions. And if we're not careful, in modern times, we may be the first to witness an extinction event caused by a single species. And you've guessed it, that would be us. So we have to remember to take care of the world around about us. It's a world that's filled with a dazzling array of animals and plants and other organisms. And when we look back through time at the millions of species preserved as fossils, we can see the same variation stretching back hundreds of millions of years. And when we study them in detail, we realize that whole groups have appeared, thrived, and then fallen, only to be followed by new biological pioneers in the story of life and evolution. It's a story throughout which extinction has closed many doors, but allowed other doors to open to fill the spaces left behind. But what about other species that have disappeared more recently? Well, here's some examples. The West African rhinoceros was found in several countries towards the southeast region of Africa, measuring 3 to 3.8 meters long and 1.4 to 1.7 meters in height. This rhino would have weighed 800 to 1,300 kilograms. It had 2 horns, one measuring half a meter to 1 meter long, and the other slightly shorter but just as dangerous. Their diet included leafy plants and shoots. And in the 1930s, preservation action was taken to protect the species. But unfortunately, the numbers continued to decline, and the last West African black rhino was seen in Cameroon in 2006, and it was officially declared extinct in 2011. The white dolphin, also called the Chinese river dolphin, lived in the Yangtze River for 20 million years. However, their numbers declined drastically from the 1950s onwards as China industrialized and the river was used for fishing, transportation, and hydroelectricity. Although at present not officially recorded as extinct, no one has seen a river dolphin since 2002. The Pyrenean ibex, or Iberian goat as it's more commonly known, also disappeared recently. They were thought to have numbered some 50,000 historically, but by the early 1900s its numbers had fallen to fewer than 100. The exact cause of the Pyrenean ibex's extinction is unknown. Scientists believe factors included poaching and the inability to compete with other mammals for food and habitat. The last Pyrenean ibex was killed by a falling tree in northern Spain in 2000. That's a very unfortunate way for a species to die out. And finally, the Tasmanian tiger, which was native to Australia, Tasmania, and New Guinea. The Tasmanian tiger was a large carnivorous marsupial. Not related to tigers, the creature actually had the appearance of a rather large-sized dog. It's believed that it was hunted to extinction, which was encouraged by bounties placed on the heads of the animals and human encroachment into its habitat, and perhaps maybe also by disease brought in by people. The last wild Tasmanian tiger was killed between 1910 and 1920, and the last captive animal died in Hobart Zoo in Tasmania in 1936. Now, extinctions might seem like a depressing subject, but the more scientists can understand about the natural processes that push species to the brink, the better chance we have of taking action and perhaps even preserving our own species. By knowing how best to act, whether by breeding endangered animals in captivity or simply limiting activities, humans can reduce the extra pressure on nature and allow it the time and space it needs to recover. And there's always time for you to get involved too. Perhaps there's something native to your land, to your country, to the place where you live. Perhaps there's an animal or a species that needs help. Why don't you hop online and check out today? Maybe you can make a difference and you don't know until you try. And so that's it for today's interesting stuff. I hope there was something fascinating or unusual in there for you. And as always, under the video you can find some comprehension questions. And if you want a different subject, just let me know. That's it. Wherever you are, whatever you're doing, take care and have a fantastic day. Speak to you soon.